Good afternoon, everyone. The LGBT community in Malaysia has been criminalized based on various penal codes. Based on JAKIM, the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, the number of the LGBT has increased from 173,000 to 310,000 between year 2013 and 2018. LGBT stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and along with heterosexuals, they are terms used to describe people's sexual orientation or gender identity. To elaborate further, lesbians are women that are romantically, sexually, and emotionally attracted to other women, whereas gays are men attracted to other men. Bisexuals are people who are attracted to both genders. Transgenders is a term used to describe people whose gender identity or gender expression differs from the gender they were assigned at birth. The community uses a rainbow flag as a symbol of pride. In the original 8 colors version of the flag, pink stands for sexuality, red for life, orange for healing, yellow for the sun, green for nature, turquoise for art, indigo for harmony, and violet for the soul. Welcome to the forum. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Heng Xiang, a researcher from the Ministry of Health, Malaysia. Ms. Mumtaj from the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia, Ms. Akshaya and Ms. Kok Sing Tong representing the LGBT community. Let's start with Mr. Heng Xiang. What are your thoughts on this community based on the health?
I understand that they have their own rights and perspective. However, in my opinion, LGBT should not be encouraged among human population as it will lead to several issues such as health and relationship problems. The major problem of LGBT patients is health problems. These people face health care risks that are often not addressed because the lack of knowledge of patients' sexual orientation, ignorance of specific healthcare issues, or because the patient feels that the healthcare professional is homophobic. Thus, they have a higher risk of facing certain unique health problems than normal people. After several research, it has been proven that LGBT population are more vulnerable to depression, sexually transmitted infections, substance abuse, and even suicide. Most of the LGBT population have a higher chance to face depression due to their inability to cope with the social stigma and discrimination or prejudice from the community, especially youth. Studies shown that 60% of the LGBT youth were reported with depression and poor mental health. Apart from that, LGBT population have increased vulnerability to be infected with sexually transmitted disease, STD. STDs such as AIDS and gonorrhea are diseases that can be transmitted from one to another through intimate physical contact. Based on a report from a research group, LGBT population have an increased sexual activity without suitable protection than normal people. Therefore, they are more vulnerable to these STDs. Besides, data from the 2018 National Survey on Drug Use and Health suggests that substance abuse patterns reported by LGBT population are higher compared to those reported by normal people. The reasons reported are mostly lack of support and internalized homophobia. Thus, they involve themselves in drug abuse to temporarily enjoy and relieving their stress from the social stigma. Because depression is a non-common factor for suicide, LGBT tends to have high risk of suicidality. According to studies, overall LGBT population have 3 times increased risk to suicide than normal people. Main reason of suicide includes depression, prejudice events, and lack of support from the community. The extreme discrimination from the community drives them to despair and eventually attempting to suicide. That's all from me. Thank you.
I totally disagree with Dr. Heng Xiang because our society should support, accept, and treat us LGBT people as equally as others. There is discrimination everywhere towards us, and it is not okay. This is because we are not only treated horribly by others, but the medical staff too, which will end up endangering our life through delay of medical necessary services. For instance, there was one patient with HIV disclosed to a hospital that he had an intimate relationship with another man. The hospital staff then immediately refused to provide him with medical services. Next up is the discrimination in workplace and hiring practices against us continues. Did you know a 2017 opinion survey of the LGBT community found that 59% of us are less likely to afford employment opportunities. One in 5 of them said they have had difficulty when applying for positions. From GLSEN's National School Climate Survey, a biennial survey of LGBT secondary school students, we know that school is not always a safe place for LGBT students. Most of the students frequently hear an anti-LGBT language and experience harassment related to their sexual orientation and gender expression. And the majority of the students feel unsafe at school and are likely to skip classes or even full days of school to avoid the name-calling, bullying, and harassment they face on a daily basis. They will skip the classes, stop from going to school, or even worse, they stop facing society just because of the daily harassment for being themselves. Doesn't seem fair, does it? That's all from me.
In Malaysian and LGBT activism is considered one of the sinful acts on our religious life. The Islamic law in our country even punishing the person who committed LGBT activism with severe punishment. For example, punishing with jail sentence, this person is convicted with sodomy, and in Indonesia, public caning punishment given for persons practicing gay or lesbian activities. Apart from religious view, LGBT-related persons facing high level of chance on being discriminated and can face many insulting movement situations from society. LGBT-related person not only become target of insultation, but the family or friends also face discrimination and insultation target by society, which leads to spoiling related person and the family relationship come to turmoil. Person practicing LGBT being marginalized by society and it contributes psychological pain and depression to that individual. LGBT practicing person also look weird in some society where the usual right turn into question marks such as being blocked from employment, promotion or wages increment. I agree with Dr. Yang that LGBT community faces variety of serious health problems. Multiple studies have shown that depression and anxiety affect their mental health and disease can be transmitted to LGBT committed or at higher rates than the general population. Coming back to our law, the concept of marriage in Malaysia is only accepted between man and woman, a couple of their own children, or even adopted is considered a family. But two men and two women is not considered a family. LGBT activism also affects human decent producing ecosystem, which can cause in decreasing the population number. If LGBT activism starts spreading into large of number followers or practices in future. That's all from me. Thank you.
That's interesting. What about you, Miss Akshaya? What do you feel hearing all this? What are your thoughts?
In my point of view, we as a society should support, accept, and treat us, the LGBT community, equally because we never chose to be born this way. It is not our fault to be who we are when it is clearly stated as a medical condition. Secondly, we are humans with mind, body, and soul. According to the studies, 40% of the homeless youth are from this community. This is because we are not accepted even by our own families. So, in result, these people leave their families and try surviving on their own. Unfortunately, like what Mrs. Zingtong said, we are not wanted by society as well. So, where does that leave us? My point is, if our family accepts us for who we are, there will be a stronger support and motivation to survive and achieve in the society. This will prevent people like me from losing our lives into bad influence or not even given the chance to try. Once the LGBT community can start counting on their families, this will be the first step for us to build the confidence of walking in society with no fear. By accepting our LGBT family members, we as a people will start to see a positive image of this community in the world and hopefully accept them. That's all for me.
Very well said, Miss Akshaya. But unfortunately, we do not have much time left. But before that, Miss Kok Sing Tong, would you like to add anything else to it?
Yes. Well, you may ask why us, the LGBT community, should be supported. Why should we be given our own rights? Very simple. We as Malaysians are diverse with races, beliefs, languages, sexual orientation, and skin tones. But the one race we all share is the human race.
That's very true. So let's try and keep this race as one.
Wow, very well said, Miss Akshaya and Miss Sing Tong. With that, we are ending our forum. Thank you all for attending and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you.